Hello, welcome back to this random Table Boy Fix Stuff. This is a Trutone d1203. It's a 6-tube transformerless set, but it's actually not hot chassis. It has a floating chassis. That's kind of interesting. Not interesting, but rather not as common as the hot chassis design. It's just got a volume control on the front, volume power, tuning knob on the side, and then push button tuning, this is the cheapo kind of push button tuning where it just pushes the dial to the correct space. It's wrapped in some kind of burlap or tweed or something. The back has seen better days, or at least it's here. They've got two of the original type push pins. There's spring style pins here. And two of those left. And the other two, someone has put nails in, which actually seem to be somewhat functional. Of course, the stuff attached back here. I'll leave that one attached. I'll think that has to be on the side. Of course, looks like most of the holes have pulled out, so they just added tape. Again, it's not pretty, but it is functional. I might try and do something there, or I might just leave it as is. It's not super important. There's a tag here. It shows how to set the push buttons. It's not the right model number. When you search that model number, nothing comes up, but when you search 1203, this one comes up. So this is definitely a 1203. Someone must have got confused. See, it has two numbers here. It's 1203 and the 2215. This is the 1203. So we've got tubes in there. We've got a little speaker, and you can almost see back in there the lamps for the push button tuning. May as well get the chassis out. Actually, let's get it out first, and then we'll plug it in and see what it does. Okay, so I got it out of the cabinet. There's 4 bolts in the bottom, and then I took the front knob off, and I took the screw out of the side of it, and then that knob comes off. And so just put the knobs back on for testing purposes. You have to lift the back up a little bit in order to get these push buttons to clear the front of the cabinet. So let's plug this in. We'll turn it on and see what happens. Definitely a filter hum. Well, it's not picking up anything. It sounds like there's crackling every time I turn the dial, so it sounds like the tuning capacitor is shorting, and I do see, looks like some rust in there, so hopefully you'll be able to clean that out, but I also have to change the filter capacitors, obviously. I was hoping it would pick up something through that hum, but I think the tuning capacitor might not be functioning well enough for that to happen. So first we'll probably look at changing that capacitor. Let me unplug this first, and then see if I can clean out the tuning capacitors and rust in there. I'll show you. See there's a pile of rust on that plate. Hopefully the other plates aren't that bad, because I have no way to get in there and clean the other ones unless you soak the entire thing in rust remover or something. But I think that's a little extreme for right now. Let's see if we can clean that up. let's take a look underneath and see what we have for capacitors. So it looks like we got a multi-section electrolytic there, and then just not that many actually. What, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 maybe paper capacitors. Dog bone resistors. I think this radio is from the early 40s, so I'm a little bit surprised that they're still using dog bones at that time. But anyway, so we can change these capacitors and clean out the tuning capacitor, and hopefully that'll be all this needs. Okay, so after cleaning up some of the tuning capacitor, we are getting a little bit of reception now. You can see as soon as I turn it past that, it starts shorting out of it, so it's going to need more cleaning, but call that your before for before the capacitor replacement. You're definitely going to need more cleaning on that tuning capacitor though, to get the rest of the travel. Okay, so after replacing this main filter capacitor, which consisted of 140 and 220s, I should hold it right side up. Only 150 volts. The ones I put in were, I think the 47 I put in because they don't have 40s anymore, I think is a 450 volt, and then the two 22 microfarads that I put in are both 350 volts, so that'll be fine. And now,
talk about fortuitous, because the year ahead luxury, this is an event that we do at Bloomberg
definitely sounds a lot better.
They had already scheduled for this.
Of course, the tuning capacitor is still shorting occasionally. The tuning capacitor definitely needs more work yet, but
110 calories, Pat.
10 tuning stations now.
Sugar in one serving. Wow. I grabbed the popular pomegranate juice, 150 calories and 31 grams.
Just scratch that whole way through.
Very low, so we had
So need more work on the tuning capacitor, and I'll probably go through and replace those other couple capacitors on the bottom, the paper ones. And hopefully that should be about it. So for cleaning the tuning capacitor, I'll just take a little piece of sandpaper and just slide it in between the fins. And just work it back and forth a little bit. Just open this all the way. Try and get as much rust as possible out of there. It is making progress. It's not perfect yet, but it's definitely getting a lot better. I can tune through most of this front part of the band now without any scratching, so that's getting better. As far as the capacitor replacement, so you can see I've got the 3 electrolytics actually fit in the original clasp here. I bent it a little bit just to make it a little bit tighter, but these are held in nice and tight now. Ooh, see, there's no wiggling there, so those are held in nice and tight. I will go through and change all these paper ones too, just because even though the radio does sound pretty good now, but you know how long these are going to last. See if they feel warm. Actually, not really. But I'll go through and replace them anyway, just because there's not that many of them. So hopefully once I get those replaced and clean up the tuning capacitor, they should be done, and then we'll try and set some of the push button things. I just wanted to say, when you're cleaning things like this, you don't want to use anything that's too tight of a fit. You can see how this just slides in relatively nicely, and it's a nice loose fit in there. And if you show anything that's too tight in here, you will bend these. They're very thin and they're very easy to bend. And of course, then when you bend them, then they can short against the plates when they mesh, or they can throw off the capacitance a little bit, and then you won't get as good of a reception. If you notice, see how these ones here have slits in them? So that's actually the intent of these outside ones. At the factory, they bend each different piece of the, like in between the slits, they bend each different piece a different amount to get maximum reception in that part of the band. So I'm not sure if you can see how this one on the end, this piece here is bent in a little bit from the back, the one in the back and the one in here in the front. So apparently, in order to get maximum reception in that part of the band, they had to bend this in just a little bit to get a little bit more capacitance out of this capacitor. So you don't want to mess with these because you can very easily throw things off by doing that. So just as little force as possible as required to clean these out. And it is going to take a while. It's taking me a long time to get this, but it is slowly getting there. But if you mess it up, you're going to be spending a lot more time trying to fix it, and you probably will never get it back to the original setting anyway, unless you do an alignment, just hook up an alignment generator and then do each different piece of it separately, and it's just going to be a much more annoying process than taking your time with a piece of sandpaper. So it's going to take a while, but hopefully the end result will be worth it, and we'll have clean reception all the way across the band. One thing that I did notice is there doesn't seem to be any tremor on here. Usually they have a tremor on the oscillator capacitor, which you can see. This one's the oscillator one, and this one has the tremor on it. This one does not have the tremor on it. So usually what you would do on a normal radio is you set this one to get the dial pointer at the right location. So for example, if you tune in, say, 1200 and your dial pointer is pointing at 1400, you can adjust that capacitor to make it so that the oscillator tunes in 1200 when the dial is actually pointed at 1200. And then once you do that, you would then adjust the trimmer on the antenna capacitor, which is this one, in order to get maximum reception, because when you shift the oscillator, then this one's going to have a different capacitance than it was when it was receiving 1200 when the capacitor was at a different location. So basically what happens is you turn the capacitor so you're pointing at the station that you actually want to receive, say 1200. Then you would adjust the oscillator trimmer so that the radio is actually picking up 1200. But suppose that before it was picking up 1200 here, so now this antenna capacitor, when you move it to the correct place, this one has a different capacitance, so you would then adjust the trimmer on this one in order to get maximum reception for 1200 at this capacitor location. This one does not have that trimmer, so I guess the way that you're supposed to do it is just set for maximum reception, and then the dial, set the oscillator so that you get maximum station reception, and then wherever the dial pointer ends up, that's just where it ends up. Because I was playing around with this, I noticed that I was getting 1440 up around 1500 or a little bit over 1500, so I adjusted the oscillator trimmer to bring it down to 1440, which was what it was supposed to be. But then when I did that, I got a lower reception because there's no way to peak the antenna capacitor for the new location there. So what I am doing is just setting it back to what it was to get the maximum reception and just have the dial pointer be wrong, because I'd rather have better reception than an accurate dial pointer. And you can see that is, I can't move this. I mean, I can move it over that way a little bit, if that would work down here. Yeah, maybe that'll work. Maybe I'll just move the pointer itself over a little bit. So anyway, I guess then what you're supposed to do is set the oscillator trimmer so that you get maximum reception, and then just adjust this pointer to be the pointing to the correct station. I don't think it's a huge deal on this radio because you do have the push buttons, so they probably assume people wouldn't be tuning the radio that much anyway. Just push the push buttons for whatever station you want to pick up. But anyway, I'll get back to cleaning on this and change the capacitors, and hopefully that'll be it. We're definitely getting a lot better here. Just a little bit of scratchiness down at this end yet. It's definitely getting a lot better. I'm not sure if I'm gonna spend much more time on this. There's a little bit of crackliness down here at the end yet, and there's basically no stations down here anyway, so there's a little one there. And the next one is there, so there's really only one station that's down here in this crackliness, so I'm not sure if it's worth spending much more time on. After I did most of the sanding, then I sprayed some of this contact cleaner into the tuning capacitor and worked it back and forth down here at the end. And it definitely helped a lot, but there is still this little bit of crackliness left, so I might spend a little bit more time on this, but I think for the most part I'm going to be satisfied with this now. It's definitely a lot better than it was. And before we couldn't tune in hardly anything up at the high end here. Now we got pretty much the whole dial back. And we can tune in the whole dial, it's just that there's a bit of scratchiness out at the end here yet, so. Okay, so I got this back together now.
As long as you're satisfied, you'll take no action.
So some of these push buttons here. I set them at night, so maybe the station is on the now.
I don't either.
That one is.
No, I'm not, totally not.
Now, I have all
72419 or book your cleaning online at your resident.
one of my big ones in a long time. I want to be happy. I want to be.
So to set these push buttons, all you do is you loosen up this screw, tune to the station you want. You hold in the push button until you get it right, and you just tighten the screw back up again. Should have to reset that one.
Whatsoever, and they're going to be telling you.
This is 9 weeks before Iowa.
I'll have to reset. I'll have to reset, but you get the idea. You're going to see what we get for a channel sweep here.
That's about as dumb as a rock as I've ever heard in my entire life.
Weeks at that point.
A lot of Elizabeth Warren support a lot of her voters.
Small businesses safety.
And I think we're putting happiness. Now notice that it was...
But Zach, you're leaving out the really...
There's still a little bit of scratchiness down here, but it's really not that bad. So that's going to be about it for this one. Definitely working a lot better than when it came here. I'm not going to worry about this little tiny bit of scratchiness down here. There's only like one station down there, so I'm not even going to worry about that. It's kind of like the point of diminishing returns as far as that. You know, how much more time do you want to spend to get out that little tiny bit? You know, if it takes you, say, 2 hours to get most of it out, then it takes you another 2 hours to get, you know, another 5%, and it's just downhill from there. So I'm not going to worry about that little bit of scratchiness there. Up here where all the stations are is perfectly fine. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and thank you for watching.